The monks of San Donato Escopeto paid him to do another altarpiece, giving him 30 months to complete it. After 7 months, he stopped work on it and never touched it again. Even so, it wasn't until 15 years later, when Leonardo went to Milan, that the monks gave up on it. So it's easy to imagine Leonardo was just being a wide boy, and there must have been a bit of him that thought, damn, what sort of heavies are going to be sent after me by monks? Certainly he can't have been expecting a knock on the door with a bunch of friars going,
"Nice workshop you've got here, Leonardo. Wouldn't like to see it, say, burnt down in an accident."
Usually he did start projects, it's just that he didn't finish them. For example, the Adoration of the Kings is extraordinarily complicated, with dozens of characters and galloping horses displaying complex expressions, and all mapped out according to his laws of mathematics and perspective. To someone like me, who's utterly useless at art, all this technical perfection seems amazing, because I'm staggered by anybody who can draw at all. I see a drawing on the inside of a toilet door, and one part of me thinks, oh my God. Another bit thinks, but how do they get the bends in the legs so realistic? In Adoration of the Kings, next to the Virgin Mary, and equal to her in size at least, is a philosopher, giving human ideas a status they never could have held in pre-Renaissance times. The only flaw is that many of the characters, including the Virgin herself and the baby, are, as they say in the art world, left in sketch form. Or to a layman like myself, God, he never got round to colouring them bits in. There was another side to the atmosphere in the city-states that affected Leonardo's career, which was the constant threat of war. Florence had overrun Pisa, Milan was threatened by the French and Spanish, both cities were in conflict with Venice, and everybody feared Rome. Leonardo knew the Sforzas of Milan were threatened on all sides, so he offered his services as an artist who could double as a military engineer. But the Sforzas may also have been keen to employ him because he was reputed to be one of the finest players of the lute across the city. Not only that, but Leonardo made his own lute out of silver in the shape of a horse's skull. So he was the world's first heavy metal lute player. According to the 16th century writer Vasari,
he surpassed all the musicians who had assembled to perform, and so charmed the Duke by his varied gifts that the nobleman delighted beyond measure.
Leonardo also impressed Francesco Sforza with his plans to build a huge bronze statue of his horse. He spent several days wandering around fields, studying horses, but kept getting distracted.
Yeah, come on, get your ass in.
Over a period of 15 years. One of his projects that took him away from the horse was his design of possibly the world's first ever revolving stage for the theatre. And at one point, he was commissioned to make something extraordinary to celebrate a visit from the King of France. According to Vasari,
he constructed a lion which advanced a few steps, then opened its breast, which was entirely filled with lilies.
But there was another side to Leonardo's personal life that must have seemed quite strange at the time. He was a vegetarian. Now, personally, I don't think I could ever be a vegetarian, because to me it seems quite rude. Like, if someone comes round your house for dinner and says they're a vegetarian, it's like they're dictating what you should cook them. I wouldn't go round a vegetarian's house for dinner and say, I've brought my own menu. I'll have the steak and kidney pudding. Not only that, Leonardo would buy birds in the market at Milan and then take them home, open the cage and let them fly off. He wasn't just being soppy about birds, he saw them as creatures who could teach humans about science by doing naturally what we strive to do artificially. If he'd only been liberating them, he could have let them go in the market. For the same reason, he imprisoned flies so that he could study the way they fly to see if he could work out how humans could as well. In his notebooks, he wrote about further experiments with flies.
You will note that by trimming their wings a bit, or better still by coating them with honey to prevent them flying, you can get their wings to make a muffled noise as they flap.
Even more peculiar, when he lived in Rome, he found he could blow up a bullock's entrails with bellows. He would do this in the corner of a room at parties and let the entrails go so they went round the room like a balloon, terrifying the guests. But he had to interrupt his studies on flight to get back to building the Sforza's giant horse. The trouble was he was then commissioned to paint the Last Supper on a monastery wall.
I'll do it.
And he clearly became dedicated to it, as his method was described by a friend, Bandello.
Many a time I have seen Leonardo work on the Last Supper from sunrise till darkness, never eating or drinking. Then 3 or 4 days would pass without his touching the work, yet each day he would spend several hours examining it.
The cynic might say this was just laziness, as if he was being like a builder going, that Judas is going to have to come out. But the reason he was so obsessed with this painting was that, as well as his normal concern for mathematical perfection, for him it represented the whole meaning of the Renaissance.